Dude, this must have been the most badass POC video for
Yeah.
this, you know, like just see the thing just go.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
there's more.
Oh, there's
So
more.
the-
I mean, I was gonna ask
Yeah,
about
yeah.
triage.
Like,
Yeah.
this is like a freaking blowout sale. But wait, there's more. Alrighty, Youssef, dude, you're probably one of our top requested guests that we get on the pod. So thanks for coming on and welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I really enjoy your podcast and your show.
Awesome, dude. That's great. So yeah, we just for context for the viewers, we are here in sunny Miami for H1305, and we are getting to do a live interview with Youssef Samouda. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, it's Sammouda, but it's
Sammouda.
basically the same. Yeah.
I tried, but what if they? Oh, there's some construction going on or something. Yeah, dude, super excited to have you. So many people have requested, and your blog is absolutely legendary. So definitely looking forward to this one. I wanted to start us off with this episode with kind of discussing, obviously, client-side stuff is your passion. You know, one of the things you love the most. If we look at your write-ups that you've done on your blog. And so I kind of want to get a little bit more niche down inside of that and understand that a little bit more. What kind of client-side things makes your pulse go up? What kind of thing are you maybe talking post messages? Are we talking about hash? Like what kind of things within client-side stuff is your favorite to work with?
Okay, so basically when I do look in client-side stuff, I view it, of course, initially as a bug bounty hunter. So I look for stuff that pays off the best. So maybe I look to anything related to oath. So eventually I can escalate to have an ATO. Also, so it would be maybe post message, maybe like leaking the hash with the token, oath token. Yeah, so
that makes sense. There's definitely a lot of areas of client-side stuff where that sort of stuff comes into play. And if you look at your blog, it's just an array of, okay, we've got a hash leak, we've got a post message, but we got XSS, we got everything all over the place. So, but for you, it's mostly focused on, let me see what this application does, and let me see how I can, optimize this for the goal of account takeover. That's pretty much where you end up normally, right?
So the final goal is to find an account takeover. So sometimes it would be, like you said, post message. Sometimes it's even self XSS. So if I see a chance to, let's say, find the self XSS and from there upgrade it to an ATO, I'll do that.
Very interesting. So is most of your hunting focused around ATO? Like, is that pretty much your primary target all the time, or do you ever go for like XSS? Or because you mentioned like a self XSS, is that what you're looking for, or is it kind of just along the way?
Yeah, so with client-side bugs, the maximum impact you can reach is basically account takeover. So if you find it through an XSS, a self XSS, or a combination of, because when we say self XSS, it's a combination of login, logout CSRFs combined with that self XSS and post messages. So all of that, eventually the biggest impact you'll reach is account takeover.
Okay, gotcha, nice. And I just want to make sure you're keeping the mic a consistent distance from your.
Sorry about that.
He's got this nice, deep voice, and I want to make sure the mic picks it up. No, that makes sense. And he says essentially, I just try to go for the max impact possible on the client side. Just don't give up until I have everything. That's great. That's awesome, dude. And so I guess I wanted to talk about specifically, I want to go and talk about some bugs right off the bat. There was one blog post you did, and I think this is one of your most recent ones. And you haven't blogged as much over the past year or two, but this is the last one on Meta, and it was a client-side race condition via post message. And this one caught my attention because this is something that I've kind of been researching a little bit. And I was like, I wonder if this is possible. and I started, standing up some things in a lab, and I started playing with it, and it seems very possible. And then I stumbled upon this blog, and I'm just like, frick, Youssef's already done it. So I was wondering, have you had, obviously this was an amazing write-up and an amazing bug. Have you had similar scenarios like that before, where you see essentially state-changing actions happening with PostMessage that will allow you to trigger race conditions in the flow that's happening on the other tab?
Yeah, so with that one, if we can explain more about it. So it was like an RPC communication between Facebook and iFrame hosting the game in apps.facebook.com. So basically what it does, it requests the third party or the game page request to the parent the OAuth token for that app, and Facebook should reply with that token. What they did at that time, they checked the app ID, the client ID, so not any app would request the OAuth token of other apps. They did that check correctly, but what I found out that if we specify, for example, another app, they'll check the origin in the server side. So, for example, if Candy Crush requested the OAuth token for Instagram app, it would fail eventually, because the origin has to be set to candycrush.com, and that would fail in server side. So what I did was initially make the request with Instagram.com origin. And they had like some kind of client-side function that would change the origin check. So because it's an asynchronous request to the server request, so because of that, while waiting for the response of that request, I'll just make the client-side that client-side post message to change the origin. And now, like, because it already made the checks of the origin initially, now they completely trust that origin. So when it comes back, it'll just send it to
dude, I freaking love it, man.
So the whole thing is tied to essentially that like window instance or whatever, like where it's coming from. That reference, and then it just all basically goes from there. Once it establishes that sort of trust with that session or that window, wherever the messages are coming from, then from there it's basically blind. And
so they do a lot of checks initially of the origin and all of that, and after that they make the request to get the OAuth token, and after getting it in the response, they'll just like, they don't do checks anymore. They just send it back to whatever origin, to whatever window, the source window, and setting the post message to that origin.
So they're using the built-in post message, the second parameter in the post message, right? A lot of time for the attackers, it's star, but for some people, when they're trying to control what origin they're sending it to, that second parameter is the origin that they're going to allow the message to be sent to. Is that right?
So that second parameter to set the target origin, I change it while the request is the response is being returned.
I love that. And so one, I just kind of wanted to brainstorm with you a little bit about that type of bug. Obviously that one's a great one. You have an asynchronous post message that can go through and change essentially the origin that's allowed to receive the post message on the way back while they've already done the checks. So that's great. One of the ones that I was kind of thinking of is when there's a window opener check of an origin, right? And what I was thinking was, wouldn't it be interesting if we had 3 tabs? Okay, we've got attacker controlled tab, opened tab, victim tab, right? And when this third tab does a window.opener check, the original tab redirects this guy to a cached page on the parent on the site that's allowed, right? So it does window.opener location.href or whatever. That's valid because it's the same origin. And then real quickly, our first tab redirects the second one back to attacker control domain before this guy does a post message to him to intercept the post message, right? And one of the things that I did, but like you mentioned in your write-up, the whole rub here is there has to be a delay, some action that takes time. And normally that's going to be an HTTP request, right? Because you'll get a couple hundred milliseconds of time to trigger your exploit. And one of the ways I figured out to optimize this was forcing the browser to cache some of these pages. So when the first page does the redirect of the second page, that doesn't start another HTTP request. It loads it straight from the browser cache. So it's an instantaneous switch.
So if you send a post message to a tab that's loading, what happens? Does it hang? Like, does it fail?
I think it fails.
Okay.
So what's the question?
If I send a post message, like say I redirect the second tab to some other domain, and I send a post message while it's redirecting.
Yeah, because there are no cross-origin event listeners for messages. So there are none set yet. So the post message would be sent, but nothing to receive it.
So the key here is making sure that you get that timing correctly. And the way that I figured out to do that in my research was, getting the browser to cache your HTML page, with some specific caching headers. And then you redirect that page that will be receiving the post message right before the post message gets sent. And then your cached HTML page is already there listening.
Yeah. You know what it also makes me wonder is if you could take advantage of certain, like if it's parsing JSON, maybe you give it a really like deep, dense JSON blob that takes it a second to parse so that you could actually use some built-in functionality to force a delay in just processing time, not even like, caching and stuff, but how long does it take for it to load this giant JSON object?
Yeah.
After the bug I found in Facebook, I actually found a bypass for that, and basically the bypass was a part of the bypass was to try to escalate the time needed to so we can so they applied a lock mechanism. So when the request is sent, there is a lock. So we need time to trick it to not trigger the lock. So I did that by sending a lot of post message requests, a ton of them, with each one with 5 megabytes or something like that.
Wow.
And that did the trick.
No way.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so cool. I did something similar once with a post message bug on PayPal. And essentially it was a scenario where I needed to win a race to an iframe on a victim page, right? To send the configuration, right? And I needed to get a post message first and get an ID and then win the race with the other post message back to that child post message. And the way that I won it was by not using JSON parse, by using string.
Directly.
Yeah, exactly. Like substring, right? And so I knew that the ID was always at, index 23 or whatever, right?
So directly.
Exactly. So just grab it, substring, go. And whereas the other iframe that was sending it was using JSON parse and doing some other stuff, which takes more cycles. So there's lots of fun ways that we can do all sorts of cool stuff like that. So I mean, obviously this bypass sounds pretty freaking amazing. I've never thought about sending, massive post messages to kind of bog down the side. Have you done any other stuff with post message race conditions, or just those two? I think it's a pretty rare class.
Yeah, so it's actually the post message is just like the communication part.
Yeah, I'll let you turn that off. You're good.
Yeah, no worries. So it's actually like sometimes you'll find. So I view post message like event listener, message event listener of post message as a source. So basically, it can happen from the URL. Sometimes you can find a race condition. So let's say on hash change event, when the hash is changed, it will trigger some stuff like it would grab some text from the current location.ref and try to parse it and all of that. So I guess sometimes there are regex checks, and what you can do is race condition the regex check of the hash change.
Right. Again, large data.
What the heck?
Yeah.
It's but it's like it's very time since right. So it's not I tried it. It worked like maybe once in 1,000. Yeah, it's
'Cause
very low percentage.
regex bombing is a thing, right? Like where you can create like really hard things for
Brute
regex.
force it,
Yeah. So you can. Is that basically what you have to do? Is like create like a payload that is really hard for the regex to work with, so that it takes the amount of time that you need it to take.
No,
so
the regex basically checks for example, let's say it checks the URL of a text from a text, and if it passes, it would do something. For example, set window.location.href to that URL.
Mhm.
So basically, I'll raise condition the check or the regex check and the window.location.href. So because that
right in
you
between
understand
the
it, so it would pass the regex. After passing the regex, instantly it would change.
It's no wonder it was like 1 in 1,000, right? Because the timing on that, I mean, there probably wasn't even a line between it, right?
Yeah, a line, but you can force it. Also, you can brute force it because it's a client-side code, so you can make it like the page won't reload. It doesn't. In this case, it doesn't need to reload, so you can do it like 1,000, 100,000 times.
I think I think those are really cool types of bugs too, because you can use sort of like, I think maybe technically it's a pop under sort of thing for that, where you open up a page, right? And now the user's interacting with this page, but then you can do this attack on the window that you just came from, right? And because you've got a frame reference and you can, brute force some stuff. I use that often in these sort of scenarios because, you need some explanation on why the user's just sitting there for 5-10 seconds while you're brute forcing. Obviously, if it was only 1,000, then it wouldn't take very long on the client side perspective. But if you're doing brute forcing something a little bit more intense, like I've had to brute force a 6-digit code before via PostMessage, which is very doable.
It's very fast.
It's instantaneous. Which was something that I did not expect. So that's definitely an extremely cool bug class. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because PostMessage is one of those things where it's like you're almost making a request, but you're not. So like the possibilities with it are so much larger, right? Like it's so fast because you don't have to make HTTP requests every single time. And so this extra functionality that they like made as, user flow, ease of use, whatever, like it's now the hacker's advantage.
Oh yeah.
Did you know, like before PostMessage, it was like the two pages were communicating using window.name.
Yeah. So sometimes you can still use that for exploits, especially when you need to get a payload into a heavy CSP environment. I don't know if you've ever done that, but like, you set the window name and then you can transfer it away and access it. So that's definitely a nice gadget for transferring data across quickly. But man, is it a pain in the butt though? And I'm glad we have PostMessage now instead of window name. So you mentioned, I want to go back to something you mentioned before. You said, and I don't know why I've never really thought of it this way, but you mentioned the on hash change event. Like, of course, I don't know why that hasn't been in my client side perspective of looking for window.addEventListener hash change, And so that's another great source. And I'm wondering actually, and I don't know off the top of my head, can window.opener change the hash of the other page without redirecting the page,
without refreshing?
Without refreshing.
I have stories later. You want to hear them now?
Let's do it, man. I want to hear it right now.
So basically, do you know when you go to Google and search for a couple of words?
Oh my gosh, I love how this story is starting.
So when you search for and pops up an article, when you click on the article, it will automatically scroll down to that particular paragraph.
Yes.
So this is technology known as scroll to text fragment. It's supported by Chrome. So basically,
is it a Chrome only feature?
I guess it's Chrome. The last time I checked, it's only Chrome.
Okay.
So basically, you specify in the hash part, you put : text equals, and you put suffix and prefix and suffix, and basically Chrome will look in that page for that paragraph or that stuff and scroll directly to that one. So how I abused this, and actually was a 0 day in Chrome back then when I used it. It's reported and fixed. Yeah.
Dude, this is great. I love this. Yeah, and we want to talk about this too because you found some other browser bugs. But yeah, continue. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, what I did was trying to let's say look in a page for certain words for let's say like you can't look for CSRF token. You won't find it as
visible.
text. Yeah. But we'll talk about this. So what I did first, you have to detect the scroll. So
is this a cross-site leak? Is that what this is?
Or is it's a cross-site leak.
Dude, this is so smart. Why did I not think to look at this? Yeah.
Yeah, but here comes the part of the redirecting window to opener and changing the hash. So this check of like every time the hash changes, you look in the page and scroll. If you find the text, it would only happen if the hash was changed from same origin domain.
Oh, interesting.
So you can do it, for example, from attacker.com window.opener.location.ref equals and only change the hash.
Right.
It won't work because if it's cross origin domain, it would require each time to change user. It would require user gesture every time.
Would it work if there was a cross-origin policy set in the headers on the domain? Like, could you update it? Like, is it blocking you purely because of browser security, or is it specific to this feature?
Specific to this feature.
Okay.
It won't do the scrolling, the searching of the text and then scroll unless the hash was changed by same origin domain. So the first part of the attack is to find a page, let's say in facebook.com, that would we can control to set window.opener to a certain URL. So for example, we can set make this page return window.opener equals https facebook.com/certain endpoint.
Sure.
It won't allow, for example, JavaScript's URI scheme, but still allows facebook.com.
And of course, you just had that in your pocket, you know?
Yeah, I had that. So yeah, I had that, and
of course, this is why. This is why we really highly encourage going deep on programs, right? Like this sort of a masterpiece of a situation where Youssef comes up with a browser quirk, and then you need the specific piece of functionality. If you know an application, especially one as big as Facebook, inside, outside, upside down, then you'll have a list of these. And I'm sure you keep a list of gadgets as well, you know, of things that you found that are like, oh, this could probably be helpful someday, but I don't have a use for it right now. This is something that I think not enough people do, and if they would, then they'd see a lot bigger success in the bug bounty realm.
Yeah, so sometimes you see something interesting in client-side code or even an endpoint that returns something, and you just ignore it. You feel like it's interesting, but you ignore it. But I advise anyone to just save it in a note. For example, one time during a live hacking event with Facebook, I didn't find any bugs. I just went through the notes and I found, that PostMessage XSS, DOM XSS, the one that I have a page.
You're gonna have to be more specific, Youssef. You have a lot of post-message DOM XSS.
So just let's not go I forgot that one, but I just found it from the note. Like I just went through and I got second place during that
that's
event.
crazy, man. Yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah. I'm thinking you remember that one time I got DOM XSS? I was like, I can think of a couple. But yeah, okay, so continue.
Back to so basically with this one, as I said, you need to have the redirect or the change of the hash from same origin domain. If you have that, you can basically search in the page. It would scroll to a certain part of the page if it finds that word. The second and this is the 0 day. It was
Yeah, I was like, how do you leak that though?
yeah, so it was like how to if I frame that page, and when I frame that page, sometimes when the iframe scroll, the main window would scroll too.
Yeah.
It happens. So I was able to detect the scroll in the iframe with the scroll in the parent window. So with that, I can like have a confirmation if a word is found in the iframe or not. This the
Dude, that's crazy. So, okay.
So
Wow.
you scroll on the parent? Would you scroll on the parent page or on the iframe?
So the iframe, the scroll would happen if the word was found using the scroll to text fragment. If the word was found in the text, it would scroll in the iframe. But unexpectedly, Chrome also scrolled the parent window. So both of them scrolled.
And would it do it both on load? Because you can put it in the URL, right? And it would just, like, if you put the iframe URL as that text with the text hash fragment.
Okay, it would scroll to that text in the iframe.
Yeah.
Okay, but that scroll triggered the scroll in the parent
As soon as it loads?
Yeah. So also because
No
you
freaking
can...
way.
Yeah. That's one allowed me to like basically load any page in an iframe and search that page and detect if the word was found or not.
Wow. And the only requirement being that you need a gadget where you can set the
make like a client-side redirect from that domain.
Gotcha.
So, for example, a page that would do window.opener .location.href equals that domain with the hash, and that would
that's actually not a very uncommon situation with post-message related stuff, I think, too.
Yeah.
Being able to do hash-based redirections or injections into window location.hash. But it can be window location.hash, not window location.href, or does it have to be href?
Yeah, it can be hash.
Oh wow.
But it's rare to find .hash.
Yeah.
And also it can be like the same page would set window.location.href. It's not like opener setting opener.
Yeah, well, I say it is I guess it's rare to see window location.hash, but it's less rare to see pages where you can control the routing in like these sort of client-side page routing situations, right? Where you've got like this whole route table that's set up for the hash fragment, right? So if you have a gadget where you can control that, then but I guess it depends on whether because you would need if you're not trying to leak something that changes, then you can do it over multiple refreshes. That's nuts, man.
Sometimes you can do it with the refreshes, but sometimes because for example this is there's more to the story. So yeah.
Okay.
So, sometimes if you can let's say return the raw page, so you can change the content type set to text plain. So now it won't be rendered as HTML. So now you have access to data. You have access to the CSRF token. You can query it.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is now text. So now you can search text anywhere within the whole thing.
But you still need the gadget, don't you?
Yeah, but the gadget not in that page. If you found like the gadget that would, let's say Facebook.com has an endpoint, that endpoint returned a JavaScript that would do window.opener.location.href equals, and you control that part. So now you can change that page, opener page, to this, like the one that...
Dude, what the heck?
So
this is crazy. So then you've got that middle page, and then you're using...
So every time I want to...
no, I'm thinking about it wrong.
Yeah, every time I want to change the hash in that page to make to look for a word, I just...
Vuln to update it.
So I just reload the endpoint that has window.opener.location.href. I just reload it, change the value of the
Right.
the value set, and it would make the change in the other page.
Because the event has to be triggered by a change, right? So you have to change the hash, or you have to change the URL.
It has to be changed by same origin domain.
Right. So it requires some other vuln. You can't just load the URL once, because that doesn't change. Like, the hash isn't changing, but if you load a URL that then changes the hash, that triggers an on hash change event, which then you can pick up and it scrolls, and then you can use that as an oracle.
So that happens. It's not like JavaScript code, but the browser detects on hash change.
I'm seeing it now, man. Dude, this must have been the most badass POC video for this, you know, like, just see the thing just go.
But there's more.
Oh, there's more. I mean, I was gonna ask about triage.
Like, this is like a freaking blowout sale. But wait, there's more. No, this is great.
So the SCTF, the scroll to text fragment, it detects words, so it doesn't detect character by character. So it's words. Like, for example, you can brute force the CSRF token because it's it's like 16 bits or whatever. You can't actually look for that. You need character by character. In Chrome, the separation of words is using spaces, using whatever. I guess spaces and periods, maybe, or tabs. So what I did, like, if I can find a way to change the page encoding, for example, if it's not specifically set to UTF-8 in contained type, if I can control some part of that page, I can inject few characters, and the browser would assume that it's not UTF-8, it's UTF-16. Now I'll have like Chinese words as
no way.
And Chinese words, like, they have like it's separate.
And then you can decode that back down to
UTF.
Dude, what the heck? This is some Matthias Carlson shit here.
Okay, now I need to ask: when you submit something like this to a triage, like, what do they understand it? Like, how much back and forth do you have to go through?
Yeah, so actually this one didn't, it wasn't reported. Some parts were reported to Facebook.com, but this back with UTF, with the Unicode change and everything, was reported to a program that I can disclose. And they had like sometimes a hard time to understand it, but eventually they did, and they fixed it.
Wow, dude, that's great. And I guess your reports need to be very in depth in order for them to be able to reproduce all that. So that's amazing, dude. What a great example of the persistence needed to do this job, because I'm sure you didn't like just see all of that. I don't know, maybe you did, but if I were you, I wouldn't, going into that situation, I wouldn't have, seen that path straight from the beginning. I would have, it would have taken me a lot of iteration on top of, all right, and well, now the, spacing is wrong. How do I fix that problem? How do I get this to be a same origin redirect? What's going on here? So there's a lot of persistence that's needed there to try to figure out all those things.
So sometimes, like, an advice, if a new feature comes out, you just go to the standard page, read it, and also the discussion page in I'm not sure, in GitHub or in Chrome. In Chrome, you'll find like documents. They share documents how they want to protect against this security threat, how they'll protect against this. Sometimes they'll have like accepted risk, and that accepted risk, you can use it to launch another attack in some scenarios.
Interesting. Do they ever push back on that because it is accepted risk? Because they go, well, this is accepted risk, so we're not going to take that.
Yeah, but
push back against a Youssef report? What are you, crazy? Like, no. Try to die?
No, but the browser guys thought that is accepted, or like, for example, they didn't require user gesture with client-side redirects originating from same origin domains. I guess now they do. So after this, with the brute forcing and everything, they do now. So sometimes they're not convinced about something, and after that they change.
Wow, dude, that's an awesome story. So glad we got that one right in the beginning of this episode. That's awesome. Wow. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit stunned on that.
So,
Like, I just
so I wanted to ask, like, it sounds like a lot of your bugs are very multifaceted. Like, there's a lot of different aspects. There's a lot of different moving pieces and stuff. You mentioned you take notes. How, like, is it super detailed notes? And how much are you going back to those notes? Because I imagine as you're hacking, you're like, some of it's clicking. You're like, oh, I have this thing that'll work here. Yeah. But some of it maybe not. Is it all just notes, or how are you keeping track of that?
So I just keep a screenshot of verb, like, or sometimes I just have like a note that this page returned, let's say, a client-side code that would change window.opener.
Okay.
The other one would make a post message that I can control. Like control the content, so that the notes would be like this, like this one allows me to do this, this one allows me to do this, and that's it. It's not like deep noting.
Okay, that's cool. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like everybody I talk to, like, notes are like a huge part, because there's so many like potential things that we come across that are useful later. And I think the bugs that you submit, especially, like, I can't think of anybody who does like that level of chaining and like vulnerability, like combination that you do. I feel like every bug that I see, it's always like there's multiple pieces, and it's so creative. Do you ever dupe? Like, do people ever dupe? Like, no, never.
No, like the last time I
Never
duped, yeah, it was in 2018, I guess, or 2019. Yeah.
This guy hasn't duped in 6 years. That's crazy. Wow, dude, that's amazing. So thank you for that story. That's great. And I kind of want to come back to your post message flow a little bit here. Okay, so what kind of methodology do you normally use for this? Because we've got a couple things. I'll sort of state the obvious. We'll get those out of the way so that we can go into the more interesting stuff. You know, when you've got multiple pages, multiple frames, you know, tabs or iframes and stuff like that, that's always a place that you're going to want to look for that sort of post-message based communication. And you've got, you know, obviously you can see if you've got the post-message tracker plugin installed, you can see the post messages flying between the page and the global listeners on the side. So, like, what is your go-to methodology for identifying those things? You just read the JavaScript straight, or are you looking specifically for the listeners?
Yeah, so the first thing I do is thanks to friends with extension. So I just grab, I see the part of code that said the listener. I just go to the source code and get like that part and start looking. If it looks interesting, like they're accepting some data, they're using that data to do something, I'll just continue with the research. Otherwise, I'll ignore it and move to the next one. So that's it, like one by one. Sometimes, like, if I see something, I see, for example, a listener from Google, let's say from GS, like the one SDK, GS SDK that you include to do like Google authentication. So I just ignore it because I'm sure I tested before it's safe, so I just ignore it. I'll ignore, for example, ones talking to iframes that are third party, their sandbox, unless they're leaking some interesting stuff to that third party iframe.
Yeah, and in those scenarios too, I've also seen sort of an inverse thing. Like, if you can pop the thing in the iframe, then you might have the ability to leverage something back on the parent frame, you know, because that listener is expecting something specifically from that embedded host, right? And then you have the ability to talk to that parent frame.
Yeah, sometimes. So if you read the code and see that, for example, it only accepts post messages from origin, let's say, I'm not sure, plugin.com,
Sure.
and that origin is from that iframe. Okay, and it has some potential. I just go to plugin.com and try to find an XSS there to inject the iframe, and from the iframe I'll just send or directly send.
And especially on high-paying targets like the ones you're used to working on, it's worth that extra effort. If you can guarantee, if you can open up your browser tab and do a post message, back, or your browser console, and do a post message backup and verify that there's a bug there. If you can get an XSS on that, child domain, then it's very much worth the time to go get the XSS on that child domain and then pop that big bug by going back up the stack, right?
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
Like maybe if it's very deep, let's say iframe, and from the iframe, I have a story about this with Facebook actually, and it was very interesting. And it was like maybe a chain of 4 bags or 5 bags. Yeah, so
I'm very interested.
Yeah,
you've got my attention, Youssef.
Yeah, so just one more thing with PostMessage.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find that there is an iframe to plug in, or let's say a logger or these iframes for marketing logging.
Oh yeah, all the time
for the clicks, and sometimes it's not doing something critical, but the parent page is sending critical information like window.location.ref is sending it to that iframe. So now I'm interested in the iframe. If I can find an XSS in that domain,
hijack the iframe.
Yeah, hijack the iframe, receive the window.location.ref, and okay, it doesn't have lot of data, but I can, for example, do OAuth redirect to that page and leak it from there.
Is that something that you often? So I actually had this in my list on the account takeover section, because I want to pick your brain about account takeover stuff too. Is that sending off alarms in your brain when you see, okay, I can control the page to which an OAuth code is being sent to? Is that often a big thing for you?
Yeah, so for example, that one actually triggers. Okay, it depends. If I can only I can only leak OAuth code to any endpoint. Okay, it's interesting now, because it's not that interesting actually, because I need to find an endpoint that would pass its current parameters to redirect or something like that. So I need to find it's easier with hash, because if it's in hash, I can just find an open redirect and the browser will carry the hash
a
to
302, right? Or like you need a server side redirect for that, right?
Yeah. But if it's code, it needs some work, but I accept it. Like sometimes I just do it. Also, there are many things that trigger my head. Yeah.
I wanted to ask. Well, maybe I'll save this until after. But I was going to ask, when you look for account takeover, is it always like low level type of post message, like technical vulns, or are you looking for like, I changed my email on the profile page and something goes wrong here? Like, do you ever look at it from sort of the user perspective, or is it always like HTTP, browser, JavaScript, that
yeah,
sort of?
So you're talking about account takeover that can be caused by server side mischecks or misconfigurations. Yeah, I do that a lot, but not with companies I usually work with, like Meta, because they have that. You can't.
They've kind of got that squared away.
Yeah. But let's say I have few examples that are great actually. So, for example, let's say certain company uses Facebook, uses Apple, uses Google.
Grave mistake.
Yeah.
Never use Facebook in front of Youssef.
Yeah. So in that case, you'll have to, for example. They'll check after the OAuth flow. They'll check the email.
Right.
They'll not check the user ID or something else. So when they read the email from Facebook, from Apple, they completely trust Apple and Facebook, and they just log you into to any account with that email. So now, if I can find an email confirmation bypass in Facebook, an email confirmation bypass in Apple, I can hijack that company, any account in that company.
Yeah, or one of the ones we've seen is like, if you're passing an access token directly, then sometimes they will just check the email associated with that, not the app associated with that. Have you seen that one?
Yeah. I found it actually. That one because they didn't use the official SDK by Facebook for certain programming language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say another one that we've seen is like you'll create an account, then link your Facebook account to it, and you can change your email on the vulnerable site, and then you just log in with the same Facebook account, and it's tied to the maybe that's what you were just saying, but it's tied to the account ID, and so there's like two separate account references that get linked together here, and it doesn't really matter what is on your Facebook account as long as it's valid.
Yeah. So I guess we've got that. You mentioned a Vuln story, and then we got on a little tangent there. Do you want to go back to that one?
Okay, so this one it's a combination of a lot of stuff, PostMessage and also cryptographic secure functions and not secure functions in client side. Yeah,
lack thereof. Yeah.
So basically Facebook has this messenger chat plugin. It's included in the JavaScript SDK in clients with Facebook. So basically when you use the plugin, it would just pop up a chat and you can chat with that page in Facebook. So actually Facebook used that plugin in their own website in an endpoint like facebook.com goals/marketing, something like that. So it loads the plugin, and that plugin at some point it has a DOM XSS, but to reach the point to exploit the DOM XSS, that's the hard part that we'll try to do. So the communication between the iframe holding the plugin, this chat plugin, and the main page, facebook.com/goals, they are communicating, and they're doing like some kind of check. The check is a callback. For example, if you have a post message from the iframe to the parent, it should have like an ID, a certain ID, which is let's say random stuff. And if it's true, it would allow it to call many functions, and where the DOM XSS happens.
We see this this is a pretty common thing with post messages, where there's like a some sort of random ID or some sort of, and then that is tied to a specific handler or set of handlers. That often see that.
Yeah, I've seen this on mobile as well, actually, with like JavaScript bridges going between the web view and the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So tell us how you broke it.
Yeah. So basically, this I went to the part where how this ID is generated, and it was generated with the math.random function. This function is not cryptographically secure, like what that means. The pseudo random generator, if you can leak 4 or 5 values of math.random, you can reverse to find the seed, and from that seed you can predict the next value of that random number. So what my objective was to leak the like 3 or 5 math.random values of that page, and from there I can predict the next one, or I can reverse and find the callback ID for the two used for communication. And to leak that math.random IDs, they actually named the iframe, window.name. So they use the same function they used to generate the callback IDs. They used it to generate the window.name.
Interesting.
So now if I'm able to leak window.name of an iframe, I can if I can leak it 4 or 5 times, without refreshing the page, because that would set the seed.
That's what I was gonna say, because I literally have done the same bug. And actually, shout out to Donut, my man Donut, because he's done a talk on this, and I pinged him. I was like, hey, I read your talk. I still don't understand any of it, on the insecure, pseudo random stuff. And then he kind of walked me through it, and we figured it out. In my specific scenario, it wasn't exploitable, but it sounds like you found a way to actually leak some of the seeds without refreshing it, which is this is once again is this gadget after gadget after gadget chained together to create this. So continue.
So the facebook.com page in mobile, like this is related to mobile.
Okay, all right.
So in mobile they returned like X-frame options with the allow from. So allow from is deprecated basically, and it's ignored in mobile and even in desktop version. So basically that page can be iframed.
Okay, I'm sorry. So
facebook.com
X-frame options, and then there's allow from, and then it specifies a domain. And that's depreciated, so it just ignores it. Interesting. That's, for any of you Recon people out there, that'd be a good thing to hit, like mass search for, to see where there could be this configuration where they're thinking they've got a secure X-frame configuration, but they don't. Very interesting. I'm sorry, continue.
So that page, facebook.com/goals, that page that load the iframe with the plugin now is iframeable. So I can iframe it in my website in mobile. So when I iframe it, so attacker.com can access the inner iframe, of course, and can read the name of the iframe. So I can leak one value of math.random, because I can read the iframe name, which is like was generated based on math.random.
Wow.
So
this is nuts.
So after that, I'll just send another. So the way to not refresh the page to maintain the same browsing session. So they had like other functions or that you can access without having that certain callback ID or certain that ID. One allowed you to refresh the iframe, or to try to create the plugin or refresh the plugin. So each time it refreshed the plugin, it generated a new window.name and generated.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
I just love it when it works out like that.
This is nuts. I can't.
So now if you leak 5, even if they're separated, for example, you have a math.random value, then one that you couldn't leak, then one that you could leak. So even if they separated by 1 or 2, you can actually find the seed. So
wow.
So I found the seed. I calculated the next math.random and got the ID, used the ID to exploit the DOM XSS.
It's so cool because this is like almost a CTF challenge. I feel like I haven't even thought about like math.random since like I did CTFs, and it's so interesting. I didn't realize that JavaScript math.random was vulnerable to that as well.
It's been 4 years.
Wow.
It's been known too.
If only somebody could fix it.
I know, right?
They fixed it. They have like now a secure crypto. They have it, but
it's math.random is still vulnerable.
It's still vulnerable, but it's faster. So
the secure random class. What's that? There's like a secure random class, right? Is that what you mean? Like the two separate?
So math.random is vulnerable to these type of attacks, but they have like a safe one in JavaScript, crypto. I think it's crypto API or something, and it's totally safe.
Wow. Well, a lot of people still using math.random, so definitely an interesting thing there. And then that whole concept of graphing all these random these points that are in the random generator function and then generating the seeds off of it, really cool. I loved that research by Donut and others as well, so very cool there. So I wanted to kind of, so that was a mobile piece as well, which is great. I wanted to see that. And I kind of want to go back to what you mentioned earlier. You said a lot of things make the alarms go off, in the head. And that was one of the questions I had here. And so here are some things that I could kind of come up with off the top of my head. OAuth flows, any sort of domain handoff of information, post messages, cookie bridges, etc. Those are all things that kind of make my brain kind of go, whoa, wait a second. I think I should be paying more attention to hash changes from this conversation that we've had. I'll be paying more attention to that in the future. Can you think of any other things off the I know I'm putting you on the spot, but can you think of any other things off the top of your head that sort of get the alarms sounding in your brain?
Yeah, so sometimes like not a lot of people would look in DOM generated HTML. For example, if you have like JS code that would create an iframe, and the iframe source is set from a known source. So we have a sink. Like many things, they're not known to people. Like, for example, if you set the action of a form to JavaScript URI scheme, it's an XSS. If you set the iframe source to JavaScript URI scheme, it's an XSS. So sometimes I just focus on things that let's say
like using create element, document.create element, and then you kind of see
it's
where
not like direct inner HTML set or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah, inner HTML is one of the things I always search for, obviously, but I don't always search for create element. That's smart. And then specifically for these specific types, you've got source, you've got script, you've got iframe, you've got what are some of the other ones?
Form,
form.
Action, setting action to
and then setting action. That's good.
Would you say you start more at sources or sinks?
So
I wanted to ask this too. It's a good question.
So most of the time I start with sources. Yeah, but
my man, give me some right here. Team sources, let's go.
Yeah. But in this,
get out of here.
I'm all about the dopamine hunting. I need to sink.
Get out of here, Joel. Get out of here.
Yeah, because even if you find a vulnerable sink, you have to trace it back, and you do. But with sources, like it's obvious where the info is going.
And I think source related stuff also lends itself to gadget hunting. You know, like even if you don't have sync, even if it doesn't result in an actionable vulnerability, you can do stuff. You know, and that's what I'm all about. I think I get hold on just a second, sir.
Wait, so you mean the 50 unexploitable bugs that I've been documenting are useless?
Shut up, Joel. Hold on, no. You know, I'm all about knowing what I can do with the application as an attacker, right? I want to know every place, every location where I can affect the app, you know? And I think hunting from sources really helps you understand holistically what an attacker is capable of doing in the app, even if it's something benign, you know, like creating an element on the page that you have no control over, right? But it inflates page size, or, you know, who knows? Maybe it's some random cookie gets sent, and you can, you know, and it's a randomly generated cookie key, and then you can inflate the cookie size and cause client-side DOS or something like that, and then use that in a different bug.
So with sources, you always end up with something.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that's worth.
I'm gonna clip that. I'm
getting indirectly roasted out here. This is.
Scoot forward a little bit. No, that's great, man. I'm glad to hear you say that as well. Sources
sometimes like I look for things that I look for things before sources.
All right.
In certain conditions.
Let's ignore that part. Anyway, Youssef, I've got some other questions for you. No. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. You do look for syncs? Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, if I know that page is setting iframe, is creating an element iframe or form or something, and I'm sure they're using they have a source that I control or something. I just straight look for things, because I'm sure that eventually they'll use my source or because I guaranteed the source part. So now I'm looking,
because you know what type of stuff you're looking for. Like, for example, with like the iframe stuff, you're looking for changing the href, you're looking for changing the URL or the window location through JavaScript. Like, so you're going to target a sync instead of looking for an entrance. Got it.
Yeah. I'm looking at my notes here, and we sort of covered a little bit of this already, but I'll repose the question, which is, you know, so similar to an OAuth code being sent to any path on the thing, like if you can control the path with the redirect URL, right? what are some other things that you've seen since you specialize in account takeover? What are some other things that you've seen that result in account takeover? And what I've learned from you already today is leaking location.href is pivotal. And so I assume that's one of them.
Yeah. So also self-XSS. Basically, having self-XSS, you can leak the OAuth token. Most scenarios you can do it. So for me, in some targets, self-XSS is directly an ATO.
Does it have to have a CSRF to update, like to trigger the self-XSS? Because I assume your attack scenario basically like attacker loads page, updates an XSS to themselves, which then triggers your attack, or
like you're talking about like triggering the self-XSS via CSRF login, and then
do you have to have a CSRF?
So basically that's why it's called self-XSS. So you self-XSS yourself in a certain session in the victim browser to actually trigger that XSS in that browsing context from that origin,
right? And
all of that to actually, for example, access an opened page from the previous session that to read the window.location.
I've used that before, right? Where you have a page that's already open, and then you establish a self-XSS, and then you go back up and reach over and grab it and bring it back in. That's interesting. It would be more interesting if we could figure out how to actively have control of the victim session in a different tab. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was wondering whether it's possible to manipulate same site cookie policies to create two separate sessions inside the browser. And so, like, say, for example, I've got my attacker controlled page that's got an iframe, right? That iframe is not a top level navigation. So it's not going to have cookies sent to it, right? And then within that iframe, I log in myself, right? Trigger the XSS, reach back through the parent and over to the opener tab, which I've now redirected to the other site, the victim site. And that site still has the session open of the victim, but it's an isolated cookie session. Have you seen anything like this before? Do you think that would work, or am I missing something here?
I'm not sure because if you set the cookie is set, I'm not sure it would be set in that context.
We'll look it up. I tried to look this up the other day, and I actually did an experiment on my own little website with various origins, and I don't think that cookie is set on that other tab, which makes me think that those cookies are still, there's like some sort of different context, and I'm sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's probably like some sort of cookie store, because like on Chrome, for example, if you open the application tab, you have like cookies that are associated with that application, quote unquote. And it could be that it's basically just not reloaded from it has to load it from the browser, from the cookie store in order to have it associated with it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think that could be and I'm sure what's going to happen is after this episode airs, someone's going to be like, hey, Justin, here's the solution to this, which I love. So please continue to do that, people. Like, this is one of the things I love the most about podcasting is I get free research from people that just send me the answers to the things I want to know. But it's very interesting, and I wish I had the answer off the top of my head. I got pulled away that day. But I think that would be really interesting, right? Because then, you would actually just be able to control that session with the other cookies. And that would be a new way to kind of execute self-XSS, but who knows if it'll actually work.
Sometimes you don't actually need all of that. So for example, you established a certain state in that page, just leave it like that and start do the all like logout CSRF, login CSRF and everything, and just come back after all of that and exploit that page because it won't reload unless they have like client-side code that would, for example, if it detects cookie changes, if it detects a logout state, it would refresh. Unless they do that, you're safe. So just keep it waiting and do the self-XSS and come back.
That's one of the biggest arguments I think for putting CSRF protection around login and logout mechanisms is that any self-XSS can be really badly exploited, in a situation like that if you have both of those gadgets in place for login and logout CSRF. And this is another sort of con of using centralized login system. So, because if you've got the cookies isolated to a specific domain and then I hit login dot whatever.com, and that still has its session live, and I can re-log in. If they don't fully log the person out, then that can also result in some bad stuff, and as well as social media logins and that sort of thing.
Also, some things like, for example, you have a self-XSS, let's say in Facebook.com, but because Facebook Meta have like this centralized let's say platform. For example, they allow some things to happen from workplace.com, accessing facebook.com.
Yeah.
So if you find the self-XSS in facebook.com, you'll just target directly workplace user. You'll just target an Instagram user, because they have
because there's these bridges.
Yeah, like some kind of bridges.
That's a great point. And one of the things I've mentioned to my mentees recently is like, anytime you see any sort of domain bridging, you've got to fully deep dive that. And we see that, let's just say at plenty of live hacking events that we've been involved in, there's been issues with that, and so it's definitely a great spot to continue to look for vulnerabilities. All right, so let's move a little bit here to I've got a couple directions we could go here. We could go and talk about window frame relationships, window.opener, window.parent, that sort of thing, and sort of different ways to establish references to windows. Or we could go the MessagePort route. I don't know. Let me just ask this. Have you done anything with MessagePorts inside of post-message related?
I once found an ATO with the MessagePort and message channel.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so basically MessagePort is like a port you can use to communicate instead of it uses post message, but initially you create a new message channel. Message channel has two ports. You send with post message to the target page you want to talk with, and you include the message port, one of the message ports from that message channel.
Okay, interesting. So I found a MessagePort bug before, but it was very rudimentary, so I didn't actually have to fully understand the MessagePort functionality. So are you able to send the MessagePort reference cross-origin?
Cross-origin. You send
so
it
interesting.
In post message, and it can only read once, or that particular message port, it can only be read once so you can't, like, for example, save the reference or so it can be consumed once. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So basically, why they do that? So they establish, let's say, attacker Facebook.com wants to communicate with a certain domain, and they don't want to every time check the origin, check everything, do the source check. They do it once, and they do all the checks. And if all the checks are good, they share with them the message port. Now that new message channel is totally safe. We can trust each other. We don't need to
do origin checks every single.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Is there any catches to that?
Yeah. So basically, if you can leak that message port that have the communication without security checks, if you can leak it, basically you can do a lot of stuff.
Is the message port reference just like a string, or how does it? How do you like pass it?
Yeah, so it can be passed in ports in post message. Okay. So post message allowed you to share message ports or object message port.
Interesting. So I feel like there must be some way to like fetch it by name in the underlying APIs, right? Like somehow the browser is able to fetch a message port object off of that name so that it can communicate with it, right? Somehow?
Yeah. No, actually it uses that reference of message port to
just make a new object, and then it just
to send the message.
Oh, it's an
object. So in memory they have like because two of them they have different origin, so they have like some kind of maybe like memory. In memory they both can access the same buffer, I guess, but
This is so. When you said that, I'm like, what is this? And I'm looking at the post message NDN right now,
Okay.
and it says, or MDN, it says there's an option for post message to take 3 parameters: message, target origin, and then transfer.
Yeah. For
Transferable objects. And I've never
so clonable objects. So for example, a regex can be shared.
I think we're gonna have a new session now where we quiz Youssef on MDN documentation and see if he can recite it word for word.
Yeah.
Continue.
A lot of objects can be shared, but not like.
So let's see. There's array buffer, MessagePort, readable stream, writable stream, transfer stream, web transport receive stream. That's interesting. Web transport send stream, audio data, image bitmap, video frame, off-screen canvas, and RTC data channel.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And so when these are transferred, I wonder how it actually is. It a part of that E object that you get when you do?
So they maintain the same object prototype. That's why it's not actually interesting.
Oh, really?
Because you can like change, for example, the object. You can add, for example, something. It shares the data, of course, but it doesn't change the prototype.
Okay.
So because sometimes like you. I found a situation where there is a check if it's a string, and after that they'll do something treated as an object. Okay, so maybe if we can manipulate the prototype, so it's a string, but it contains, let's say, a key called safe equals something.
Sure.
So you can do that with the transfer. The post message transfer, so it maintains the same prototype of that object.
There's a lot of really interesting information in this docs.
Yeah, so there is actually a nice trick there. So see target origin. So a lot of people assume that it needs to be string, but actually it can be an object with a key target origin and a value equals to the actual origin. This you can use it to bypass a lot of checks, string checks.
Yeah, if at the time the event is scheduled to dispatch the scheme, hostname, or port of the Windows document does not match the provided target origin, it will not be dispatched. Only if all 3 match will it be dispatched.
Wow. Dude, that...
Yeah, and
this is really interesting. Huh. I did not know that. So you can provide it with an object there that will... Because then so look, I'm sorry, you've probably got it in your head. For those of you that are listening, not watching, I'm sorry, we're looking at the MDN. But look, see, the post message has two sort of, what's the technical term for that? It's like overloading, function over.
Yeah.
Function overloading.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is message options, and one of them is message target origin. The one that we normally see is message target origin, which is the string. But there's also the one with options where you can specify target origin and also specify transfer objects as well inside of that options. Very interesting. So if you have the ability to affect the second parameter directly of a post message request, then you can specify a target origin key inside of that object.
Yeah. So sometimes like they'll check the target origin as a string, and for example, if it's an object, they'll ignore it, or I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So you can bypass the first check and set target origin to the domain you want.
Oh, crazy.
I'm clapping into the mic.
And again, this transferables object thing, we'll put a link in the description, but the behavior of this, like I was just reading through how it explains how this works, and it's very similar to what you said, where it's like when you transfer an object, it literally moves the memory, the block of memory to a different ownership. And depending on the type of object, like it says here, for example, when an array buffer is transferred, the memory resource that it points to is literally moved. Instead of copying the data, other objects are transferred by copying the associated resources and then deleting the old one. So
they actually had like now they have site isolation, but they had like the possibility to to have a shared buffer shared using PostMessage, and the two sites will, for example, if you make change to that buffer, it would be changed in the other one. So that time, this I actually used, but it didn't succeed. Let's you share a shared buffer, and you keep it as it is. For example, with origin checks, with everything, when you reach the point where, for example, it would make a post message to me with that origin, I just change the shared buffer, and it would be changed in that.
It's almost race condition.
Yeah,
basically race conditioning.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. I need to look.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, post message is the shit. I love post message. That's great. And so the other thing that we had, from before was talking about window frame relationships. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of talk through a couple of those. We've got the window.opener, right? That's the tab that's opened the current page. The window.parent, that's going to be your iframes parent. And then you've got some other things as well. You can traverse into different frames by using a specific window reference and then dot frames, and that will include all the frames associated with that page. And then, but I'm a little bit confused because I thought I did something recently and it didn't work, where I had a child page that did a window.open. Is that populated into the window frames, or does it need to have a specific reference? Do you know off the top of your head on how you can get a reference to, let's say I open up a page, right? Okay,
you need to keep the reference in a variable. You can't access it directly.
No, so if I control the page, yes, but if it's a different origin, so I pop open a page, that page pops open another page. There's no way I can get a reference to that third page.
Oh, it's impossible.
It's impossible. Dude, that's so frustrating. I know that there is something that I read
by name.
Have you ever done anything with that? I couldn't get it to work properly, and we talked about it on the podcast one time, but I don't remember whether we actually got it to work ever. This will work if the pop-up window is open from a different frame on the same domain.
Yeah.
On modern browsers, this will even work if the window is... Yes, it also says... I'm in my own zone. In modern browsers, this will even work if the window has been opened from a different frame on a different domain, but this can cause some strange behavior in Internet Explorer specifically. Yeah, so maybe that's worth looking into.
Yeah.
But that is super interesting. So by window name, you can basically...
not window, when you set window.open, you set the name of the opened window. Later, when let's say, it's
if
actually.
you call it again, it just uses the same.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can store a frame reference. So, for example, I have attacker page. Attacker page opens up another attacker page frame, right? That page opens up another frame with window.open specifying the name parameter. Then this guy gets a reference to that one because this is all same origin at this point.
Yeah, you can have...
And then this guy redirects away. I still have a reference to that. I'm sorry, this is terrible for any of you listening on the actual podcast because I've got my hand and I'm just waving it, in the air. So let me try one more time. I'm sorry, Youssef. So I've got an attacker controlled page that opens another page. And then, so this is page number 2. Page number 2 opens up a new tab and these are all same origin at this point, with window.name or window.open specifying the name parameter. And then the second page transfers away, but you're still able to reference that third page from the first page.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
You don't think so?
Okay. I don't think so because the middle page is lost. So unless you keep the reference to a variable,
right? That's kind of I was thinking. If we can get a reference to it, and then we
you can actually access.
Yeah, because why can't you open a new tab, store that as a reference in memory with it like a named tab that is going to be reused, and then say your attacker the website you're attacking, the victim site, does a window.open with the same window name. You still have a reference to that because you controlled it originally, and it's going to update that existing window to the new URL, right? So
I have no idea, man. This is definitely something I'd like to see more research on, the window.name or the window name.
Yeah, sometimes the iframe can be the opener of the parent window. Yeah, there are some tricks that
What?
you can do. Yeah,
Whoa, hold up. Say that one more time. The what?
the iframe now is the opener of the parent window. So when you look in opener in parent, you'll find the iframe as an opener. Yeah, but this is not.
Youssef, how?
Yeah, so
That doesn't make any sense.
it makes. So I don't remember the details, but it's possible.
Wow,
Yeah.
dude, we gotta.
But it's not like something big that you can use unless that there are some conditions for an attack to happen, like that in a particular way. So in that case, you can.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy, man. I've definitely want to do some more research into this and kind of. So there's this article that we've referenced a couple times on the podcast. It's called "Every Known Way to Get References to Windows in JavaScript." We'll link it in the description for this episode, but it does a pretty good job. I don't think it's every single way.
Yeah. Do you know about the opener policy? Like.
No, talk to me about it.
Yeah, so now with the browser, you can control if you want to keep the reference to the opener or not. Or
I have seen this. Yes, and you can do it in the. Is this something you do in the meta tag, or is it a part of the
metadata or in the headers?
Right. Okay. Yeah, in the headers.
Yeah. I guess in the headers.
Yeah.
Cross origin opener policy coop.
Coop. Yeah. Okay, that's right.
So that limited some of the client side attacks or these attacks. Yeah.
How are you going about finding out about new stuff? Because there's the browser space especially is changing a lot, but even just separate from that, like the programs that you hack on a lot, how are you finding new features? And are you just sort of like watching their blog, or how do you look for new stuff to hack on those same targets, and also like stay up to date about like browser level stuff at the same time?
Yeah, so with browsers, it's basically they have like always discussions about how to fix this, how to so they're always discussing stuff, and I always keep looking into them, and I'll check origin trials for new features in browsers, and go read about them. With targets, it's about Recon. So you have scripts in the background, checking JavaScript files, downloading them, and trying to find the new code, new stuff. And if it's found, I just start working on it.
Yeah, so actually that's a perfect transition. I wanted to talk about Recon. So I think you have a JavaScript monitoring sort of system that you've got, right? So can you talk a little bit about that and how that works and sort of how that plays into what we just talked about?
Yeah, so basically, let's, for example, Facebook, they have an endpoint that would download React modules or return JavaScript files that include that module. So basically what I do, I just keep downloading JavaScript files, keep collecting module names. After that, query that endpoint for more JavaScript files, and keep the loop on, and also scraping pages like in Facebook for new module names, and after that download the JavaScript files. So it's about collecting as much as possible of JavaScript files.
It seems like, so for me, just from a naive perspective, I'm looking at these whole JavaScript sort of packages that they have in a specific application as a holistic entity, and as individual, or not as individual, modules and stuff like that inside. And I think I know of some hackers that do it a little bit more granularly. Okay, this piece of code is a part of this library or this module, which is a part of this whole thing that's web packed into this minified garbage that we all have to read. So I assume Facebook gives you this nice endpoint where you download the modules individually. But how do you take that same approach when you're looking at different targets, where it's like I'm separating out, okay, this module is a piece of this, and how do you parse this minified JavaScript to break apart all of these different modules and packages and stuff like that?
Yeah, so with other targets like Facebook is too nice to have that's
keep
nice. The module names.
Yeah.
With other targets, it's like obfuscated. The module name is random. Sometimes it's just an ID or numbers. Yeah.
So that we're gonna come back to. I'll let you finish, but I do want to come back to Webpack lazy loaded things where they've got the 123 : hash .js or whatever. But anyway, continue. Yeah.
So I'll just focus on not the actual content of the function. I'll just like, let's say I'll give it a hash, like that particular function with what it's doing now or its content now. Even if character is changed, let's say variable name A, B, C, like that doesn't matter. And I'll give it a hash, and that hash reference to that particular function. Now I'll just keep monitoring if that function was changed.
Is this minified code?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. So you're if I understood it correctly, you're taking a specific function, you're hashing it. So are you doing like AST trees and like breaking down the whole code structure?
Onto functions. And
dang, dude.
Yeah, but it's not perfect, but it keeps me like with all the hundreds of functions and all of that. I just keep some kind of reference that this function is actually maybe this function from a old version of that package. So that way I can like minimize the
false positives.
False positives. I can look for new functions, new code.
Do you have an elegant way of dealing with like variable names? Because I imagine if you hash like a Webpack function and then the next version it's got different variable names, but so it might be the same function.
Yeah, it depends on the target. So sometimes I'll just detect that they'll use single characters, or for example, the arguments would be A, B, C, D, E, F. So that's fixed. But in the actual function itself, they'll use sometimes random characters. So I'll have like different versions and different hash for different if this was A, if this was B, if this was C.
Got it.
So it's not perfect, but it's just for comparison, like to find like after downloading this month's version, this particular hash, is it found
just to try and reduce that attack surface down to something usable. And okay, so then do you do any of the hot AI stuff with it as well? Like, do you run it through ChatGPT or anything like that, or is it just Youssef GPT? Like,
no, I use sometimes ChatGPT to just like clear the code. Like, can you understand what's happening here? Just not spot the bug, but just like as code with ChatGPT. Currently I only use it let's say as a programmer, not as security from a security perspective. So as a programmer, just clarify this code, clarify the names, variable names, make a sense of them.
That makes sense.
It. And after that I'll just do the security checks.
I want to go back to that hashing thing you mentioned. So are you using AST to parse out, like, because JavaScript has like, there's just like 15 bajillion ways to define functions, and like, there's just a mess of syntax that you have to do. So are you using regex for this? Are you using, syntax parsing? How are you doing this?
So the only reason I'm doing this, for example, when the first thing I do after downloading the package is break it into functions or parts. So now with the new version I have of that package, I want to make sure that this function is not like new. I already checked it. It's so I already have in the previous version hashes of that function with like, even with the conditions that variable was changed to G, that variable name was changed. So if I do check of that of the function in the new package, its hash, I'll check it in the previous ones. If it's just found, I'll just remove that function and focus on the new
How are you extracting the functions though?
It's like Minify and with grep breaks and all.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so it's
doing it via regular expressions.
yeah.
Wow, that's a lot, man. there's some technology that I've been using, AST, which I think. Do you know what it stands for off the top of your head, Joel? Abstract syntax tree. Yeah, so I keep on wanting to say AST trees.
Okay,
but
what's
it's
that?
abstract syntax tree. So it should just be don't abstract syntax trees. Essentially, what it does, and this is how JSluice, the tool that TomNumNum released, deals with this. And essentially what it does is it allows you to parse the grammar of those specific code base that you're dealing with. So I've done some automation with this with PHP, and you can also do this with JS, where it will go through and say, okay, this is a function. Give me all function definitions, and it'll query that whole code block for any function definitions.
Yeah, it's a programmatic way of parsing code, right? So it's like JavaScript has these built-in libraries that you give it a chunk of JavaScript code and it will return an object that you can then say, what's the first variable definition? And if so, what's on the left side? What's on the right side? Variable name, value. And what's the name of this function? What line is it at? How big is it? And it will do all of that in like a codified way. So it's a lot more strict in terms of like, it has to be valid JavaScript code. It has to be able to validly parse it and understand it for it to get there, which it should be able to. But I like that approach more. Like regex, I would always be worried that I'd be missing stuff probably. That's
yeah, but
well, you know what you're looking for specifically because
because I have certain let's say code or regex for this target. So I spend sometimes like with each target to basically have the Recon right, and after that I just forget it.
This is exactly what we've been talking about. Is like. And I've actually spoken with some people in the critical thinking community about building this, and I kind of got about halfway through it myself, and I haven't swung back around to it. But essentially, instead of building a JS monitoring tool, building a JS monitoring framework, because at the end of the day, all of these scripts should be custom, because for each target, they're going to have a different, way that they're doing everything, and a different way of getting the files, and then you gotta unlazy load them, and then load them all in, and then JS beautify them, and then all the formats are different. So really for each target you've got individual things you should be looking at differently. And so I think that what we should do is build a Python package that makes monitoring these things a little bit easier, and say, okay, here's an HTML page, grab this specific script tag. Okay, now you've got the script tag. Great, we've got an automatic delazy loader that runs node on the inside and just dumps out all the values for these lazy loaded files and stuff like that, and then build a library surrounding that, and then we use that library to create specific automation for specific targets using these sort of tools. And it seems like that's what you've done.
Yeah, but it's for me it's still a tool, not a framework. Like I do it's not
you just run it once and it does everything at once, or do you have different sorry I imagine like I have just like a microphone attached to me at all times. So do you run it just like one and done and it does everything at once, or do you have different?
No, but I have to set it up. I need to do some manual work at first, and after that
per target.
Per target, yeah. And after that, set a few things and keep it working, yeah.
Very cool. It kind of reminds me of, there's a couple different source map, JavaScript source map unpacking tools that are like this, because source map also, it can be a little bit different per, how it's deployed or whatever. And so sometimes you need to pull it from a different, like, index on in an array or something, like index 1 instead of index 0. And one of the tools that I've used is it specifically allows you to configure, like, I want it from this path on the AST, and it'll specifically do that. I think something like that, plus what Justin was talking about, would be a good approach, where you could say like, for this target, the thing I'm looking for is here. And then you just feed it a blob, and it just parses it, pulls it out, and then you can just run that every single time until it changes. Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, and I'll mention this. I haven't played around with this tool yet, but somebody in the Critical Thinkers, the premium chat for our Discord, released this or posted this in here the other day. It's github.com/. Mido XNet/Mapper Plus. It seems like it says an advanced source map extractor based on a headless browser. And this is something that I thought about doing for a while, using headless browser to actually do that source map abstraction easier.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And so I'm definitely gonna check this out after this. They dumped it on me right as I was about to go and do a live hacking event, so I haven't had the chance to check it out yet. But I think there's a lot of innovation that could be done in the source map space, and obviously you've got
I won't say mine is the most innovative one.
Yeah,
because it's basic, but because I'm just looking for certain stuff. So after all, it's code. If I detect a pattern in the code, I don't need to fully understand it or reverse engineer it
No, and I think that shows expertise, though. That shows that you know what you're looking for, which I think is very good. Just 1 second, Joel, and then so the Webpack lazy loading piece. Obviously, we've got tools like JSluice and JSWeasel that are kind of addressing this as well. Do you have your own, I guess, piece of technology to go through and address those sort of lazy loaded pieces where it's like 1 2 3 4 : hash, and then it's dynamically creating that JS file? Do you know what I'm talking about, or is it a little too abstract?
Actually, I didn't with the targets I work on. I don't usually see.
They don't have that very often. Okay,
it's too complicated.
Fortunate. I mean, lazy loaded JavaScript is so annoying to hack on.
Let me just do this though, Joel. I'm not even sure if you saw, because we've been knee deep in the live hacking event, but I just released to the to the Critical Thinkers Discord, the premium channel, a new. So I'll share this with you too, Youssef. And you'll have access to it after this anyway, because we give all the speakers access to the exclusive content. But I've been trying to solve this problem of like, how do I programmatically extract lazy loaded JavaScript for a while, right? And it's these functions that look like this. I'll turn it around. You can see it on the left hand side, but it's these these numbers right here on the side, and then the hash, and then it automatically generates it. So for a while, the first version of the script that I did was using these crazy regex to like parse out the number and the correlating the name and the hash and the number and the hash, and it was just a whole cluster, right? And then I realized, oh shit, the function that has this defined in the JavaScript is actually a function designed to dynamically generate
you don't do
the name. So just all I had to do was copy the function, put it in my script, run eval, and then pass every number that I see, and it just automatically generates.
You don't have to worry about that.
Exactly. And so now we've got a very easy way to extract that using Node. And obviously in the browser, that they're only going to load the things that they need dynamically. But when we're doing Recon, we want to have access to every single JS file. So I released that script to the Critical Thinkers. We'll leave it as a task to the non-critical thinking listeners to go ahead and build that yourself. But it's been very helpful for me with Recon and analysis, and I think it would be for other people as well. One other question that I had here, and then we'll kind of go into a little bit more of hacking methodology stuff as we close, is how do you deal with, how do you think about client-side routing in an application that you're looking at? Like, do you often go through there and try to enumerate all of the client-side routes that are associated with an application? And do you have any tips and tricks you use for this with various frameworks, or is it mostly just going in there, reading the code, putting in the time to understand where all those client-side routes are defined?
So I initially try to understand how they define routes and everything. After that,
that's a pretty high priority for you in the beginning, or
at some point, not in the beginning, but at some point I try to find routes and client-side routes, of course, and after that I just extract all the list and review it manually. So it's mainly a manual
manual process. That's something that I'd also like to see some innovation in the space, and I always like to mention this on the podcast because somebody's going to get, some Joel-like person out there is going to get triggered and have to go write this tool that parses Yeah. Like React or, all of these different frameworks have their own way of defining these client-side routes. And I think it'd be really cool to just kind of have some sort of browser plugin or some sort of tool that would show me exactly what code is being executed when I go to this specific route. And for this event, I can talk about it. For this event, there's this, you for one of the targets, you visit a route, and then it's got like this whole weird stretch of JavaScript, and then it instantiates a class. So the first thing that really runs is like the constructor of this class associated with that specific route. And so, if that's a common thing, it'd be really cool to be able to link it to that class, and would help with enumerating all these rather than having to set breakpoints and then work back. So that's what I do. Is that what you do as well?
Yeah. So I have to, it's like, to some point it's complicated. You have to find like the first lead, and after that follow it to understand how it works. And you do it with a single route, and after that you can do it to automate it with other routes.
Yeah, a lot of it sounds like sort of that calibration that you're talking about, where when you're starting on a new target, like identifying what are the patterns, how do they structure stuff, what do their routes look like, what do client-side routes look like. I noticed that a lot in mobile as well, actually, because mobile, again, lots of obfuscation, looking for patterns. So you mentioned in your Bug Bounty Reports Explained interview that you wanted to do more like, mobile stuff and less web. Have you been doing that?
Yeah, so I won't say I did more mobile than web, but I tried. So it was like a couple of... I've been working with on OAuth for for the past few years, and I wanted to know how mobile handles that. So yeah, it was a research about like let's say you want to connect to in a company using Facebook in mobile, and how that is handled, how the communication between that company application with the Facebook application, how they start the intent with the parameters, how Facebook shakes these parameters and make the OAuth call. So I did the research on Facebook, like logging in with Facebook on mobile, and I found like a couple or 3 bugs there.
Awesome.
How like they can verify how the application that requested the OAuth token of let's say app ID equals 1, how we can verify that application has the right to access or to read that OAuth. They did some like Android app signing and all of that, but at a certain point they failed to it's like a rare condition, they failed to have like to pass the signature in the OAuth request or the signed like Android key or something. They passed they failed to pass it, and with that, if in the server side, if it receives a null key, it would just return the OAuth, like it would be successful. And but it's not like automatic. You need to allow, for example, let's say you're browsing any app, and a pop-up will show.
Which app do you want to open this in?
No. A pop-up will show, do you authorize Instagram?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, do you authorize Instagram application to access your account, let's say.
Okay.
You need to confirm, but when you confirm, you're not confirming the sharing of the OAuth token with the Instagram app, but with the attacker app.
I see. So when you do that, when you're looking at these stuff, are you mainly looking at like the Meta-owned apps, or are you looking at other apps that implement like Facebook login, for example, through OAuth?
Yeah, because even other apps would use the SDK by Facebook, so it doesn't matter. I'll just focus on the main Facebook app and the SDK. Because
they probably use the same.
Yeah.
They use their own SDK. And,
And another bug I found is like a race condition. I'm not sure it's 0 day in. It's not. So they have a JavaScript bridge in WebView, where you can. So they predefine some JavaScript functions that you can call from. Let's say target.com page in Facebook WebView, and target.com page can like have the auth token return to it from
from the bridge.
Bridge, right. So what I did, like it's like a race condition where it verifies like the document.domain or the window.location.href. So I make a redirect and that redirect takes a lot of time, and it would trick it into thinking that it has reached that page.
It's all come full circle. I mean, it's making me think about the thing that we were talking about at the beginning, right?
Yeah. It's similar to the race condition, the other
with caching.
But this one in mobile. So basically, you trick the bridge into thinking that the origin was changed, but it wasn't.
Time of check versus time of use.
Wow.
That's super interesting. That's awesome. I mean, race conditions on mobile usually don't surface themselves in that way, and it's such an interesting perspective to see like someone who's like such a JavaScript like hacker come and attack mobile in like the same way, and so much of it just still works.
Dude, that's clutch, man. I love anything relating to delayed responses, HTTP responses. That's really, there's a couple scenarios in the browser as well where you can manipulate, or you need to have a specific set of requests land in a specific order. And so I've used delay, and now with same site cookie being default, all of these have to be top level navigations. So what I'll often do is submit a post request into a different tab, delay the response, and then eventually 307 it to a different location, and then in that meantime have the original tab do a top level nav to a different endpoint, so you can get two top level navs off of one click, which is helpful in those scenarios. In
this attack, how I delayed, I just make a post request, a post a redirect with a post request. So you set the target to self and make the body 5 megabytes or something, and it just keep waiting. It will take forever.
Oh wow, so interesting. So because couldn't you also? Oh no, because it has to be what origin are you sending the message to?
So I don't recall.
No, but because if you're sending it to your own server, you could just do a delayed HTTP response, right? And then 307.
No, it's not. So what?
Right.
So what this will do? It will try to send the post message to that page. Okay, but now I send the post request to my to the attacker page, and would take a lot of time. So there is a point where it fails to check that the page has changed, but it didn't.
Gotcha. Okay, I see why you're doing the
the
massive body of the thing.
The first page is still loaded and everything, but it thinks that the second it actually redirected onto
that makes sense. Wow. So many things from this episode that are just kind of spinning around in my head still. I do have a place I want to go next. Did you have something you wanted to say on that?
I was just gonna say the same thing. I mean, I wish I brought a pad of sticky notes with me, because I'm sitting over here, but I'm taking notes in my head, and I'm I need to write all these down when I'm done.
Luckily,
recording.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've got the recording. We got our boy Brandon too, Grep who's doing the hacker notes now. So we'll get those there too. Make sure you check those out, by the way, on blog.criticalthinkingpodcast.io. You definitely need them for this episode, because there's a lot of information. I'm gonna have to get him this episode early, because it's gonna take him a long time to parse out everything we said here. The last thing that I kind of wanted to go into here was, you mentioned on your Bug Bounty Reports Explained interview, and I want to also just take the time now to shout that interview out. If you enjoy this interview, you will most definitely enjoy that interview. So definitely check out Bug Bounty Reports Explains interview with Youssef. Really great content there. You mentioned on that interview that you use MIT.
Maybe it's a water break.
Yeah, get your water. Get your water, Youssef. Come on, this is a chill thing.
He's had like 3 sips.
He starts to reach for it. I say no, don't drink it. I got a question. Answer quick, Youssef. No, you mentioned on that they use MITMProxy, I believe, or maybe it's a different. I couldn't hear what you said. It kind of cut out, right? Yeah. And so you prefer to write your plugins in that
instead of Burp.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about what you use that for a little bit more in depth? Because you mentioned on there, there's something about secrets and that sort of thing, but I imagine you're looking for more specific things on specific targets, or is it more generic things? And are you parsing JavaScript with that, or are you looking at HTTP requests specifically?
Yeah, so while I'm browsing in my browser, I'll use mainly MITMProxy and do an upstream to Burp. And MITMProxy will basically save in time, like without delay, everything HTML pages and JavaScript files and all of that, and start doing work on that. I don't need like to wait for Burp and after that
export it
and that all of that. So while I'm navigating, the things work is being done in the background.
And what kind of things?
Yeah, so mainly
share the secret. This is critical thinking podcast here, Youssef. We don't just say we do things in the background. Come on.
Yeah, so for example, it extracts a few things from the HTML page.
Did I hear things from the HTML?
Yeah.
So we're, you said from the HTML page, so I imagine, these are things specific to the current session, or
to the current session. It's also basic recon. For example, endpoints mentioned in HTML, not in JavaScript. In JavaScript, it also gets all the endpoints and possibly sometimes the parameters used to the request to that endpoint. And it just shows them directly to me, and I'll just start testing. I don't need like to do so it's basically scraping, but it's basically like having like headless Chrome.
Yeah, it's like a scoped scraping, because it's only for the stuff that you're proxying. And then use Burp as an upstream, is that?
I can still check things manually.
That's cool. That's awesome. Do you use those like paths and stuff to create your own word lists, or is that part of your recon flow at all, or is it just you look for the paths, you test the paths, and that's kind of it?
Yeah, that's
got it. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I've never really used MITMProxy. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen it used in a couple different places for like, especially hardware device proxying. I see a lot of people use it for that. What are the plugins written? Is it like Bash or what is it?
No, it's Python.
It's Python. Oh, awesome! Wow, look at that. Scripted changes to HTTP in Python. That's pretty sick.
It's like Burp, but in code. Like you can even like at some point. I thought about having a graphical interface for it and use it as Burp, but we have Burp, so
exactly, yeah. No, there's things designed for that already. This is really interesting though, and I think this could be useful as well now that Kaido has upstream stuff in place. Is if you really need some sort of plugin for your workflow, you could disjoin it from a specific thing like Burp or Kaido or anything like that, so you're able to be more flexible with your proxy GUI. And actually have, this as a lower level thing that you're interacting directly with the file system. And, I haven't used this at all, but I'm just looking briefly over the docs right now. And as I was prepping for this episode, and it looks really clean and simple.
Yeah, and it gives you access to anything in the request and the response and everything.
It like that's what you need, man. All I need is a request object, a response object. Like it doesn't have to be that freaking complex, and then just let me do something with that. So that's beautiful. I understand why you use that, and I think that's probably a great approach for any. And we've kind of talked about this on the pod as well. We need to disjoint any plugins that we're creating from Burp and from Kaido, because Kaido has its problems, right? Mm-hmm. Burp has its problems, and whichever arena you're in right now, there's no value in creating something for one when half of your environment is not going to be able to use it. So I think using something, creating it for like something like MITMProxy could really allow you to just chain that right into the upstream and then disconnect from which proxy you're actually going to be using and still have access to all these plugins. Hopefully Kaido's plugin interface will come out soon, though. That is something that I think they're very close to. So I think that's all I had as far as questions. Joel, did you have anything else before we close it off?
I mean, unless he wants to give me his social security number or something, I think I've asked everything.
That's great. Well, Youssef, this has definitely been one of the most informative episodes we've ever had. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge on all these different things and these awesome bug stories. I also have to say I'm very impressed with your technical context window and how much of these bug details you can remember just sort of on the fly as we're talking about it. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all that.
Thank you for having me, and yeah, you're running a great show.
Thank you. And I guess you're on Twitter, you're Sammouda with a 0, right?
Instead of the,
Yeah, and then do you have any other socials you want to shout out?
Yeah, just Twitter.
Just Twitter. All right, go follow him on Twitter, guys, and check out the blog too, ysam.com.
Yeah, ysam.com.
Yeah, maybe we'll see some more blogs there sometime soon. Who knows?
Maybe.
All right, thanks, man.